This morning, ethics suck, but they don't have to. So that's what we're going to try and work on a little bit this afternoon. So, this is Philosophy 101, real quick. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this. This is how philosophy, I think, should be taught. This is audience participation afternoon, so feel free to jump in. Okay, so, let's say I do not exist. Still here? Yeah, okay. So, I do not exist. What's wrong with that?
Performative contradiction.
Yeah, it's performative contradiction, right? Self-detonating statement. If I say I do not exist, you're not going to believe me, right? Okay, who here has never donated to Freedom in Radio? Okay, good, because I don't want to smoke any donators if I'm wrong. If I say you do not exist, does that make any sense?
I guess if I haven't donated, maybe.
Yeah, well, you know it's in my PayPal account, and that's to me the same thing. But no, so if I say you do not exist, that clearly makes no sense, right? Because I'm pointing at you and saying, identifying you as a discrete entity, saying you do not exist. So I do not exist, you do not exist, makes no sense. How about language has no meaning? We're getting a little tricky now, aren't we? Language has no meaning. Does that make any sense? Why not? I have to pick specific words that have meaning in order to communicate that language has no meaning. Sound does not exist.
You can't say that.
Yeah, well you can, but then I'm just contradicting myself, right? I mean, I can make up whatever nonsense I want, and I've certainly been accused of that in the past. But sound does not exist. It's like mailing someone a letter saying letters never get delivered. Okay, so this is to me the essence of philosophy. Everybody knows this old Hume thing. You can't get an ought from an is. You ever had that one thrown at you? It's as boring as when somebody says correlation doesn't equal causation. Anyway, of course, when you say you can't get an ought from an is, you just got an ought. Which is you ought not to say that an ought exists. Anyway, but what it means is that there's nothing in reality that says how things should be. Human beings need food to live, but that doesn't mean that human beings have to eat. Right? Okay, so let's move on with some of our self-detonating statements. There is no such thing as truth. There is no such thing as truth. What, if anything, is wrong with that statement?
The statement is an assertion of truth.
The statement is an assertion of truth. You get a free podcast. Yeah, if I say there's no such thing as truth, I have just asserted a truth. And that self-detonates. Sorry for those who are filming me.
It's okay.
I'll be random emotional. Like my thinking. Anyway, so from these basics, I would argue you can get philosophy, and you can even get that juicy little tidbit of future salvation we call rational ethics. Rational ethics. So, if I say to you there's no such thing as truth, then I am making a claim of universality, that there's no such thing as universality. So what is truth? The old question, what is truth? Life and time are easy because they're magazines, but truth is tough. Pause for laughter. Anyway, okay. So, if I say what is truth, well, truth is the correlation between my internal state of mind, my propositions, my thoughts, my theories, this is nice, and what's going on out in the real world, right? If I say, this is a screen, it's not a seagull, it's not an anvil, it's a screen, so what I'm saying has some validity to what is going on in the world. So truth is relative to what is going on in the world. It has to be verifiable. If I say I had a dream about an elephant last night, I can't verify that. But you can verify stuff that I'm saying about the external world. Now the external world is objective, it's rational, it's sensible, and let's just cast aside quantum physics for the moment. Just cast it right aside. No, because the reason is that philosophy has nothing to do with quantum physics. Quantum physics, the quantum flux and all that, they all resolve itself before you get to sense data, before you get to this kind of stuff. So, subatomic stuff is weird and unstable, but this, if not me, are not. So reality is objective and empirical and all that's kind of good, Randian objective stuff. Yeah, I'm down with that. I think that seems perfectly valid. We are, of course, always capable of making mistakes. There's no mistakes in reality, modern art notwithstanding, but there are mistakes in our heads, right? We can make mistakes. We can make mistakes in reasoning, we can make mistakes in counting, we can make tons of mistakes, and so we need a discipline called philosophy to, validate those mistakes. So, when you engage in conversation, when you engage in argument, when you engage in a debate, there are a huge number of bundled and implicit assumptions, universals, that are included in what you're doing. The idea, when you debate with someone, you don't debate usually whether pistachios are better than peanuts. I mean, you can have a sort of joke debate, I guess, but it's not really a cornerstone of a moral dilemma, right? I mean, is ice cream better than froyo? Who knows, right? But so you don't have debate about stuff that's subjective. You have debate about stuff that is objective, that is in the real world, that is tangible, that is material, that is provable. And what happens is people get confused because there's lots of things that are in our heads that don't exist in the real world, right? So think of a forest. What is it? A bunch of trees, some undergrowth, a couple of hunters diving away from each other. You got a forest that is all just a bunch of trees and stuff. There's no such thing as the forest, the concept that's out there in the real world. Does that make sense? You can't take a picture of a family with no people in it. Does that make sense? I mean, it's a weird thing to think about, but it's important. So when I count 4 coconuts, there are 4 coconuts. There's not the number 4 in there sprayed on or hanging off or a shadow of the number 4 or anything like that. So all these concepts in our head that don't exist in reality. And because they don't exist in reality, people think that they're subjective, but they're not. But whether there are 4 coconuts or 5 coconuts is not subjective. The fact that the number 4 is in my head and not out there in the real world doesn't mean that it's subjective. So, matter and energy exist in the world. Does the scientific method exist in the world? No. The scientific method doesn't exist. It's not, I mean, you can write it down, the atoms of the world, but the scientific method doesn't exist in the world. What it describes exists in the world, but the scientific method itself does not exist in the world. Is the scientific method subjective? No. The whole point is it's reproducible, it's testable, it's, according to measurements that aren't, it feels true to me. It has to be, right? People get confused in philosophy. I have this conversation. Man, I don't know, it sounds like a hippie who's saying, man, just because it looks brown to you doesn't mean it looks totally brown to me. It could be kind of rust-colored, man. It could be whatever. And the technical term for color is not color, it's wavelength. You bounce a wavelength off, you get the same number no matter what. I mean, the fact that we see different colors, our eyes are slightly colorblind, doesn't matter. Color is a subjective term, wavelength is an objective term. So, concepts we derive from reality. I see 4 coconuts, the number 4 is in my head because there are in fact 4 coconuts. Just the fact that the concepts exist in our head, but not in the real world, does not make them subjective. If you want to know something about the physical world that is true, you've got to use the scientific method. If you don't care whether it's true or not, you can use a Ouija board, you can ask a bureaucrat, you can you rip out chicken entrails, you can read tea leaves, you can use any sorts of nonsensical things that you want. But if you want to know something about the material world that is true, you have to use the scientific method. If you want to know what the true price of something is, what do? Stop people pointing guns at each other when they trade. Then you will find the true price. So this is all very deeply related to ethics. So the way that I approach it, I think it's a good way, we'll find out. Smart audience, let me know where I go astray. Universally preferable behavior is the term that I use. Now, universally preferable behavior is an umbrella term for me, philosophy. Because philosophy is the art